This story is based on alleged accounts without concrete evidence and may be viewed as science fiction. It is presented for entertainment and discussion purposes only, and we do not endorse or support any claims made. Viewers should conduct their own research and form their own opinions. In a previous episode, Colonel X inquired with the Brigadier General about whether it was a violation of certain regulations to administer neurochemicals to survivors without the presence of a doctor. In this video, we will continue this conversation. The lieutenant colonel didn't explain anything to me. Captain, follow orders or wait to be assigned to the worst position, got it? Then, as if not satisfied, he began to threaten me. If you keep wearing that sour face, I'll kick you out right now. At the time, I looked at my colleague who knew better. And he wisely kept his mouth shut. I had no choice but to bow my head and say, "Yes, sir." Afterwards, the lieutenant colonel resumed his friendly demeanor. And I could hardly believe that the roaring person earlier was actually him. Then, he took the initiative to talk to us again. "Captain, just like you, I'm also confused about this mission. But I know that you were selected to execute the mission. Because you have met the requirements, especially in terms of mental ability. Your commander told me that even under the most difficult pressure, the few of you can grit your teeth and get through it without collapsing mentally." Then, he handed us a few envelopes and said, "Now, we will face an unknown situation. Some parts are difficult for me to understand. But no matter what, I will complete my own job. I hope you will do the same. I want you to look at the contents of the envelopes first. Whatever is inside, you must complete your own mission, understand?" "Yes, sir." "Can you talk about what was in the envelopes? If you had told me the contents of the briefing in advance, I would have thought you were crazy. We needed to read all of these things before the plane landed, and they contained a huge amount of information." The lieutenant colonel's envelopes contained 3 complete briefing documents. Each set of papers could fill an office folder. The first briefing described a conflict that occurred at the Dulce facility 2 days ago. But the details were extremely vague, only mentioning that we had a lot of casualties. The second document contained the layout of the entire facility, and some operation manuals, including how it operates. The most strange thing was the third document, which was titled "The History of the Dulce Facility." I found it very strange at the time because I had never thoroughly understood the historical background of the destination before the mission. The third document also contained information about indigenous people. At first, I thought it was information about Native Americans or Mexican natives. But as I read on, I felt that something was off. Then, I was hit with a huge shock to my mind. And my brain felt like it was struck by something. My heart started to feel very uncomfortable, and I had to pause reading and look at my colleague who was also reading. His face was pale, and his eyes were filled with panic. We exchanged glances several times, and at one point, even the lieutenant colonel stopped reading and looked at me. But the lieutenant colonel remained calm, seemingly unconcerned about this content that was beyond the realm of reality, and focused only on the mission. I think that's why he was chosen. The reason I thought that the indigenous people in the document referred to Native Americans was because some primitive symbols and wedge-shaped characters were initially listed. But soon I realized that all of these things were related to some kind of non-human species. What I was trying to understand was not some primitive tribe, but a brand new race. Then the lieutenant colonel told us that once we entered the Dulce facility, a Navy lieutenant commander would meet us, the same person I mentioned earlier. At the time, I felt it was very strange for a naval officer to participate in our mission. But later I learned from the report that this operation was organized by a joint organization of the U.S. Army, Navy, and Air Force, with a command center called the Installation Command. This command center is a military proxy organization that oversees the entire Rio Ox, supported by the federal government's black budget, and represents various locations, including the Naval Air Weapons Station China Lake for the Navy, Edwards Air Force Base for the Air Force, and the United States Army Research Laboratory for the Army. These three teams are all under the jurisdiction of the Department of Defense. The report also pointed out that the facility's internal personnel are not welcoming to the ignorant, which is why we were immediately driven to read all the secrets about the facility as soon as we boarded the plane. Although the Dulce facility is operated by the military, it is not a military base but a pure scientific research site. Two main contracting agencies are responsible for working with Dulce. The RAND Corporation is responsible for work in genetics, geology, chemistry, and experimental medicine, while Bechtel Corporation is responsible for managing infrastructure, transportation, excavation, tunnel construction, and other work. Are there any other contractors? Yes. Applied Molecular Genetics, ORS Corporation, Raytheon, IBM, as of 1983. These companies provide services to the Dulce facility under the name of the General Service Administration. But only RAND and Bechtel have actually signed contracts with Dulce. How are they paid? I'm not sure. The flow of money is completely confidential to us. The only thing I know is that the amounts involved are enormous. Okay. Please continue with your first trip to Dulce. Sure. On the plane, we were asked to read the documents twice because the facility's internal personnel wanted us to quickly get into work mode. The lieutenant colonel said that what we heard from surviving soldiers would be incredible, but we had to quickly understand the situation, so we had to read the documents carefully. I first read the layout of the facility, and then began to study the weapons and technology mentioned in the document. The weapons and technology belonging to the natives. Then we started reading a physiological anatomy report on the natives together. My colleague was a biology expert and could explain to me some physiological features. The lieutenant colonel also said that after we arrived, we had 48 hours to complete the work and then had to leave. Therefore, we had to plan our schedule in advance. In fact, not just us, everyone would evacuate after we completed our work. The facility would be sealed until the higher leadership determined what to do next. As soon as we got off the plane, we found that the situation was indeed very urgent. We first had a few short meetings with the facility's security department, and then were sent inside the facility. There were many people receiving care there, wrapped in blankets and drinking hot coffee. One room was full of body bags and had been transformed into a temporary morgue. We started working in another room, checking the names on the list one by one to ensure that everyone was marked, whether they were alive, dead, or missing. Those survivors received a notice and had to be certified by us before they could take the maglev train back to the Los Alamos National Laboratory, so they rushed in enthusiastically. I was very surprised when I saw these people at the time. They were not military personnel, but scientists and engineers. How could they work here and keep secrets? Later, I learned that their average annual salary was over $300,000, which was quite impressive in the 1970s, and I believe the military also threatened these people. Dollar value. In 1979, the average annual salary for Americans was about $20,000. Colonel, Can I ask where to catch the maglev train at Los Alamos? At LANL's Technical Area 3, LANL TA 3. You can look at the parking lot area there. And try to imagine why they need so many areas to park? Because many people's workplaces are at the Dulce facility. In addition, there are also LANL TA 41, TA 49, and TA 73. But I still have a question. How could they possibly hide it so perfectly if so many people were working there? It's because of strict security clearance levels. Only a portion of the facility's personnel have access to sensitive information. And their identities are diverse, such as engineers, geologists, and scientists who can assign others to do non-sensitive work. These people are jointly managed by DSD-3 and CIA, and undergo rigorous screening before obtaining clearance to minimize the possibility of leaks. These people generally earn salaries of over $300,000, while outside the facility, they can only earn a salary of $50,000. The CIA's handling of leakers is also a form of deterrence, as leakers will undoubtedly be secretly killed, so no one dares to speak up. Of course, in the early days of facility construction, these methods of coercion and temptation were not well practiced, so it wasn't until 1960 that the Dulce facility slowly began to hire civilian employees. Prior to that, it was completely controlled by the military. At that time, the CIA's secret MK-Ultra program was used to screen people suitable for working at the Dulce facility and keeping secrets. And in subsequent long-term work, these people were constantly brainwashed. Stay tuned for the next episode where we will resume our discussion on the Dulce files.